hello, the English session. So let's start. We have here Mariana, Yanis, Mehdi, and I can see Peter. Oh my god. Okay, it doesn't matter. So hello everyone and welcome to the very first English
Hello.
session of Shark Convention 2025. For those who doesn't know me, my name is Gabriela Casuso. I'm a 17 years old ocean educator from Colombia and the founder and leader of Proyecto Acuática. I'm really happy to share this space with all of you and with my fellow ocean advocate, Mady Berrada, who is 16 years old and joining us all the way from Morocco. Hi,
Yeah.
Mehdi.
Hello.
How are you? Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, I've always been ready.
Ah, I like
Yeah.
that confidence. This year's theme is overfishing and the sustainable management of key species, like sharks. But why sharks? Because according to the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, over 30% of shark species are threatened with extinction due to overfishing and lack of protection. And when sharks disappear, the balance of entire marine ecosystem is at risk. So before starting this session, this version of Shark Convention, it's in collaboration with the Mexican organizations Saving Our Sharks and Desmitificando Tiburones. And it's also in the agenda of the Sharks National Month, where both organizations raise awareness between people about the value of sharks. So today we're joined by three amazing experts that I want to call them the gods of the ocean. I'm going to introduce them. The first one is Yanis Papastamatio. He is a member of MigraMar, the Latin American network of scientists MigraMar, a professor and shark ecologist who tracks how sharks live, hunt, and survive to help design better conservation plans. Mariana Arguero is a marine scientist and engineer who explores how sharks move and how much energy they use, combining ocean science and engineering. And the last one is Dr. Peter Klimley, also known as Dr. Hammerhead, also a member of the Latin American Scientist Network, MigraMar, and he has been studying shark behavior for over 30 years, diving with hammerheads and tagging white sharks. So, for our shark seniors, it is a pleasure, such a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, we'd love to open this part of the session um, with some questions to hear about your experience and as scientists, communicators. This is the methodology. One question me, one question me, and we continue like that.
Okay.
Okay? So we don't have Peter now, but it doesn't matter. We're going to continue with Mariana and with Yanis, and if he comes, we start the question with him. Okay?
All right.
All right. I want to start
Yeah,
because
of
I'm
course.
really excited. And I want to start with Yanis because when I was searching about you in the internet, I saw an article in National Geographic that really, really got me thrilled. And actually, I showed it to Mehdi
Yeah.
in the sessions. That is about how sharks can create like bonds, like have friends, and I want to talk about that. During that research, what surprised you the most? How was it? Tell us about the experience.
Yeah, so this was part of the research we were looking into the sort of social systems of sharks. And when we talk about social animals, What we mean is animals that like to spend time with other individuals. Doesn't mean they're actually friends, but they're forming associations with each other, these bonds, presumably because there's some evolutionary advantage to doing so. And the question is, why do that? And you can see that, we know about schools of fish, we know about flocks of birds, mammals are very well known to have these, social structures. But for the longest time, we never really thought that sharks, behave like that. They were never considered social animals. And I think the problem was that we just didn't have the methods to identify that they were social. And that has changed, I would say, in the last probably 20 years when we've started to reveal a lot more about our understanding of shark social systems. But most of that work had been done in captive studies, experimental studies with captive sharks. Much less had been done in the wild. And so when we were doing this study, the one you're referring to, which was with grey reef sharks, and we were working in a very remote location, an atoll in the Central Pacific Ocean called Palmyra, which is uninhabited, as a little research station, but that's it. It's protected. It's a U.S. federal wildlife refuge. It's a protected area, lots of sharks. And so we started to use new methods to study the social systems of these animals and see that they were forming these social groups. So you had, in some cases, what was surprising, some pairs of sharks were kind of forming social bonds that were lasting at least 4 years. That was the maximum duration of our study. So you had these very, sort of surprisingly strong bonds between sharks of the same individuals wanting to hang out with each other over long periods of time. And in a lot of ways, it kind of reminded me of what you might see with seabirds, where seabirds have these colonies, and these birds will turn to the same colony, and they will form associations with other birds. It's kind of similar to what we were seeing with these sharks, which was very surprising. But the sort of next questions it raised is why? What is the advantage? Why form a social bond if you're a reef shark? And that was kind of the next stage of the study.
Mehdi, you have some questions for Yanis or Mariana?
Okay, so I have a question for Mariana. So, what made you want to study how sharks move and ray moves? Like, what was the?
Well, official, like my background, it's in automotive engineering. So I
Wow.
used to work with cars and how they move, especially the driving dynamics. But the first time that I dove with a shark, it was a treasure shark. I was like, oh my god, what's going on with this caudal fin, and how did it work, and why it's so big, and why why is it an advantage or what, and why is, like how really they actually move and how they use the different types of fins. So I went out with so many questions, and it really felt like a passion. Like the automotive was never a passion, it was interesting, but it was okay. And after diving and diving and diving with sharks, I was asking myself so many things. So that's why now I'm like taking my engineering knowledge to study sharks as a natural machine, let's say. But it started like that. Yeah. My brain tried to understand how everything works, and especially how it moves. And with sharks, I love this topic.
Okay, it's amazing.
Okay. Well, I have a question. I'm going to choose Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Moe. Mariana. Okay. Mariana is the co-author of La Gran Aventura de Kai, a book that is for the new generations. So let's talk about that a little bit. What encouraged you? Like, how was the idea? How came this idea of making a book?
Yeah, it's your new book. Well, Nati and me, the other co-founder of OceanLove Project and the co-author, we were diving in Revillagigedo, and it was amazing, right? And so many sharks, and then we were like, like some sharks maybe came from, I don't know, from Galapagos, and all this connection. And in the way back, that it's really wrong. It's about one day in the boat we were talking about it, and we thought, like, it will be really amazing that the kids know that there's like the interconnection, like probably there's a shark that goes from so many parts in Latin America, and that the impact that we do in one part, it it maybe change the other side of, or the other country, other side of the world. So that's what we want to do. Like the main goal from this book is that people understand that we are all connected, that the sharks are connected, and that if we protect one part, we need to protect also the other one, because they are moving all the time. And we also talk about some problems like plastic and overfishing, things like that, really subtle, I will say. But yeah, that's the main goal. We want that the kids start interested by sharks, and also the interconnection of not only sharks but all living beings, and that we share this planet with them, and that we need to behave like that, you know.
Okay, Medi.
Okay, so now I have a question for Yanis. So, how do you analyze the movement data from sharks that you tag? Is it with AI or just GPS, or how do you do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Kind of a tough one to answer. I'll first off say that the way we analyze shark movements and animal movements in general has changed a lot in the last few decades. So I started about 25 years ago, and then the analysis we were using was very very simple, and now it's gotten much more complex. Um, so that it depends what your question is. Is your question, what area do these animals use? What is your question? What habitats do they use? Is your question, do they behave differently in certain habitats, or do they behave differently at certain times of the day? So you really have to kind of refine what your questions are before you decide what analytical tools you're going to use.
Mm.
So AI is obviously something that's coming into all of our lives a lot more, and that's also happening in data analysis. And so, for example, some of the tools that I like to use are camera tags. So I actually put cameras on the sharks to try and see what they're seeing. And now we're starting to use AI to analyze this video footage. The way we've done it kind of up till now is you have somebody has to watch hours and hours and hours of video, and count if there's any other sharks in the screen, things like that. But now we're starting to use AI to do that for us. We can also use AI to look at how the behaviors of sharks change over certain time periods, for example, day and night, and AI to analyze the data and very quickly process very large amounts of data. So AI is certainly something that's coming into the analysis a lot. But again, the specific tools we use really depends on what your question is, because animal movement is kind of a broad topic, and there can be many
Mm.
sort of questions within that broad framework of where do animals go, or how do they move, how do they use their environments.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I have also a question for Yanis. And what do you think is like the biggest behavioral threat that sharks face due to human activity, like noise pollution or overfishing?
You mean what is the greatest threat to sharks from human activity? I mean, overfishing is going to be the clearly the number one threat they face. So whether that's targeted fisheries or bycatch, where they're not necessarily the target, but they're killed or perhaps retained nonetheless. Overfishing is going to be by far the greatest threat that sharks face. Now, obviously, there's other threats that are going to be important. Habitat modification can be very important, depending on the species. So, for coastal species, for example, habitat modification can be a big one. That's something we face, let's say, off the coast of Florida, where we have a lot less mangroves than we traditionally had. And for example, mangrove habitats are very important for some shark species, and not just sharks, rays as well. And so the loss of that has had a big impact. Climate change can be an impact as well. And then you're having other threats like microplastics and things like that. But these are all going to be substantially less of a threat than overfishing, which is going to be certainly the major one at the moment.
Mary?
Okay, so now for a question for Mariana. Um, you've worked in very different countries, right? And how do cultural differences affect the way you approach marine conservation education?
That's a good question. Well, we focus a lot in Latin America, which is not
Ah,
that
yeah.
different. But we have also worked a lot in the Canary Islands. And in the Canary Islands, it's different because, for example, there we spend some months to also see like what's going on with them, and we collaborate with a lot of local organizations. That's also really important to meet like the local people because, for example, there the plastic issue and garbage is not such a big issue that we have in Latin America, right? So we focus in different things, especially of what's the main problem. But yeah, we do it especially with that, like like uh, collaborating with local organizations or with people. We go to schools also and things like that. And for me, everything of this path started in Asia, and for me, a shock was, and the one of the really breaking points that made me change my career. It was the issue of the trash. It was unbelievable, so much, and it was really crazy. But one of the shocks that I got, I used to live in Germany at that point. I found trash in German, and I was like, "What is there in Malaysia? Trash in German?" Uh, so then I researched, and I sent like almost all trash from Europe are sent to Asia. So that's why, like in the Canary Islands, we don't see trash. They actually separate it. But we didn't focus in do not throw trash on the beach, but like eliminate the consumption because we are all connected and your trash maybe will end up in Thailand, you know? So that's why like we try to focus a lot in the interconnection and see like what piece of this huge puzzle of issues eh, it's like the main important in every country.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. And well, I have a special question for you, Mariana, because I think you saw that in the Spanish session we had girls, all were girls. um, Tell me, what would you say to young girls interested in science, engineering, ocean activism, who might not see many role models yet?
I would say to follow your dreams no matter what. I had a lot of like hard moments in my path, like since my bachelor, because I was a girl. Eh, but at the end, you just need to follow your path. It doesn't matter if someone tell you, no, no, you're not a boy, you're not going to do that. Because at the end, if you follow your dreams, everything just fix and that's it. And actually, with the time, I think there are many women in this area. Actually, right now, I'm going to start my PhD, and there are a lot of women also in my master. So I think in science, it's really changing. So that's good. And that motivate also the young girls. You know, in engineering, it's another topic. It's much more complicated, but it's shifting. And yeah, I just say like follow your dreams no matter what. It doesn't matter. Also, like I will say that to boys, just follow your dreams. It doesn't matter if it's in science or in art, because at the end it's all interconnected, right? And for example, your beautiful picture of the whale shark or book, you know, we not only need scientists to protect sharks, you know, we need artists, we need teachers, we need like all kind of professionals, and actually also local people. So we all only need to follow our dreams and learn about what are the issues in our planet, how can we help, and everyone can help in some way. It doesn't matter if they are scientists or not.
Okay, now that we're talking a little bit about that, I have a special number that is that in Latin America and the Caribbean, just the 14% of the girls between 15 and 19 years old wants to work in like a STEM field, like in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And I think that is really important because something that I know is that I might find, I don't know, maybe more boys in my career because I'm going to study biology now in this semester, or maybe I could find more girls. But what I want to say is that don't think a lot about like the if there is more boys or more girls, just to enjoy what you love, because it is what you love, it's your passion. So don't let like the thoughts of what people would say like impact you in a bad way. So maybe you have another question.
I have one last question for Yanis. I really wanted to know the answer. Is that have you found a big differences in behavior between shark species, or like there's bad patterns that show up across all of them?
Yeah, so we definitely see differences between species, and there's you can have some species that are very residential and stay in one place, and others that will move over large areas. But what we also see is it's not surprising that you get differences in behavior between species. I think what has been more surprising is that you may get often differences within a species. And so now we've started to realize that we can't just think of white sharks do this, gray reef sharks do this, but rather understand that certain individuals will behave some ways and others will behave in other ways. You have this sort of individual variability. And how much variability you see will also vary by species. So, for example, within reef sharks, you'll definitely see some, but you'll probably see more variability in white sharks. We see a lot of variability. So, like, one white shark does this, another white shark does this, another one does this. So, we can't classify everybody in sort of one sort of general sense or put them lump them in one group just because they're in certain species. So, the species will differ in their behavior between each other, but then even within the species, you may see a lot of differences in how individuals behave.
All right, thank you.
Well, and I also have a question for Yanis, that is, how does, I think that this is one of the fields in like marine biology that, or at least in biology science, in biology that really caught my attention. That is the study of predator behavior. I think it's one of my favorites now. So, how does predator behavior science help us to build better conservation strategies?
Well, so I mean, predators, and obviously, predators are a pretty broad statement, right? I mean, a little spider is a predator, a great white is a predator, a wolf is a predator. But when we're talking, let's say, about upper level predators or predators towards the top of the food chain, then we might expect those animals to play an important role in their ecosystem. And that means that if those animals are then removed or lost, then you might start to see changes in the ecosystem that happen because these animals are gone. But that really is going to also vary based on the species and their behavior. So again, we tend to generalize and make statements like, if you remove this species, the ecosystem will collapse. That's not really true. I mean, some species are going to have a very strong effect on ecosystems, others may not. And so it's really important that we understand how these animals, that these predators, these large predators, what effects do they have on their ecosystems, and how might their loss cause changes in the structure of the ecosystem. And again, one of the ways we would do that is to study the hunting behavior of these predators. And again, try to see, what are they eating, how are they catching their prey, how much are they eating. That's a really important point. How do they change the behavior of their prey? And these are all the really important questions that will help us understand what is the ecological role these animals play.
Okay. Well, I have two questions in general. The first one is, what do you think is like the most powerful or the thing that you always remember in your divings? For example, I saw like a couple of days ago in Yanni's Instagram that you're right now, or at least you were in Malpelo. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I did just get back from Malpelo. I worked a lot in the Eastern Tropical Pacific, Galapagos, Cocos, Revillagigedo, but the one place I hadn't been to yet was Malpelo. So this was my first trip out there. Spectacular location, very very beautiful place. We went there to study the sharks. But as you might have seen from some of my videos, what really impressed me when I was there was actually not necessarily the sharks, but some of the teleos fish. There was some schools of jacks, that some of the highest biomass of fish I've ever seen in my life. Like that jack school was just hard to believe you were witnessing that many fish, predatory fish. Jacks are important predators as well, in one location. Um, and so diving in these places can often be quite challenging because you're very, very remote, which means that if you get into trouble, there's not much help coming to rescue you. They're often characterized by places with very high currents. They get deep quickly. You can have aggressive animals there. So there's a lot of sort of precautions you have to take when diving in these places, because if things go wrong, they can go wrong quite quickly.
Mariana?
Well, there were really special dives. Like the first time that I saw a shark was like love at the first sight. But I think the most impactful dive that I had in general, I was diving in Thailand, Richelieu Rock. It's like towards Myanmar, really far away. It was like 2 hours speedboat to get there, really remote. And it was amazing. It was like my dive number 5 or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like in heaven, like so many fish, colors and corals. And it was beautiful. And then suddenly a fish just passed by and it had like a rope, like so tight. And it was impossible to help them. Like it was really fast and it was super deep, like really hurting. And I was like, I'm in heaven, super far away from land, and this fish is going to die. Like I saw the impact that we have even far away from land. So that was, I think, the point when my brain just make the switch, like I need to do something about this. There's an issue and I really need to do something. And I think there started this like idea of leaving my engineering career or my automotive career to focus in ocean conservation. Like that was really hard dive. I was super sad, but I was thinking all the time about that fish, and I will never forget it because yeah, it really impacted me.
Okay. And well, okay, let me wait a second. Yes,
Yes, did you hear me okay?
just in time. Peter, hi.
That's great. I know
How?
Yanis very well.
Hello.
Nice to
Okay.
see you, Yanis.
Hey Pete, how you doing?
You look a little older, and so do I.
It's unfortunate to hear, but reality.
Well, Peter, you arrived just in time.
Okay.
um, before the golden question. But first, I want to ask some questions to you.
Somebody's just. I have somebody working. Okay.
Okay. Let's see.
Okay.
Okay, here it
I'm
is.
back. I am back, as James Brown would say, but you never heard of him. He was a singer.
Okay. So, Peter, I have a question for you, and it's
Hopefully, it's
that
not a hard one. Make it an easy one now.
um, you've tagged many sharks during your career. Tell me, in what ways has this helped to define better marine protected areas?
Well, we started tagging with these coded tags, and we installed bottom mounted listening stations around Wolf Island and Darwin Island. We were able to show that the sharks move from between the islands. Actually, a number of the sharks that we tagged was kind of amazing. 12 of them left as a school after we tagged them at Wolf and went to Darwin. But these tags uh, allow you to determine residency. The problem is generally they're external, so they're rubbed off. So it's really important to catch the animal and put it in the body cavity of the animal. We've also put satellite tags on sharks, hammerhead sharks, and Alex Hearn is about to publish 12 years of our doing that, but they don't last. They don't stay on. Again, this is external, so they don't stay on the shark that long. Um, and I'm not so interested in conservation. I'm an animal behaviorist, and I'm interested uh, in the ocean. It's we can only see maybe oh 50 feet, 30 feet. Uh, in the air, we can see miles. Yet animals in the ocean go from one place to another. I tagged a hammerhead shark at an underwater mountain in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the ocean, 20 miles from shore, and it went 10 miles away in the middle of the night, moonless night, turned around and came right back to the seamount. How do they do that? Now you go to the store, you go on a road, there's asphalt, there's white line, and there's a yellow line on the outside. But animals in the ocean don't have that. And I did a magnetometer survey of this seamount, going around and around and around and around it with a magnetometer, and found that there were magnetic ridges leading from it, and then I superimposed the sharks' movements on this map, and found that they were moving along these magnetic ridges and valleys. Um, and it was very controversial at the time. A little, maybe Yanis might say, a little less. Yanis, of course, has done an experiment where he was looking at the detection of magnetic fields. A wonderful experiment, actually. It's a small world, isn't it? But
It is.
somebody that's done work on it too, and and it's still they always want to explain an animal's navigation ability by its somehow determining its location by knowing the magnetic intensity and the inclination and everything. But a more simple way of doing it is piloting. Now, I went to South America and to Argentina, Buenos Aires, and I was on a ship. They traveled all the way around the point and came back to Chile. And that ship was staying almost in vision of shore. It was piloting. It was doing what I think sharks do, like a helicopter going along a power line or a road, not a plane that has a direction and so forth, GPS, So anyway, and it's probably one mechanism of orient. So white sharks, when they go to Hawaii, okay, most of the time, for 3/4, they're at the surface. And at the surface, the Earth's main field, which is a dipole, negative and positive, is dominant. And they can, by measuring with the hammerhead, I wanted to study hammerheads because of the head. I thought it's incredible. It's so different. It's a bizarre adaptation. If I could understand its function, maybe I could understand something very important in the ocean. And I believe it's a gradiometer. And running on the beach, before I did my magnetometer survey, I ran with a very famous geophysicist. And I was telling him what I was doing. He said, "Well, give me a gradiometer, and I could find it easily myself." Okay, so here's a little anthropomorphization, but anyway, so that's a really important question. It's a behavioral question. Now, Yanis probably has something to say about that. he's not only a behaviorist, but he's a top-notch ecologist and wonderful modeling statistics he used. So he's something, and he's tagged a lot of sharks too. The interesting thing, by the way, now is I'm involved in the studies of Mobula. Mobula's array, the manta ray. Now, when I was at Seamount, they're just moving slowly. They're dumb cows. They're feeding on the grass, but they're not at all. The reef manta ray has 8 different types of feeding. It sometimes they stack on top of each other. Sometimes they get in a line. Sometimes they go around in circles to concentrate the zooplankton. So rays have interesting behavior too. Even the planktivores, the ones that eat plankton, and then when they mate, they get in these whirlpools. They go around and around, and then the male and the female go off and do the thing. And anyway, Yanis, why don't you say a little something about your tagging and what you found?
No, I'll just say, because I had spoken a little bit about it before you came along, but I would say that your hammerhead study now is not considered controversial. I think you got it right. I wasn't around in the 80s when it came out, but
so this is a lesson to you youngsters.
Yeah,
I tried to publish that 8 times. One time, when I heard from Europe that I needed to do this and this and this, I said to my wife, I don't want to die before I publish this. And finally, in the 8th attempt, there'd been some experiments done in Hawaii showing that tuna detect magnetic fields. And so the editor was willing to take a risk. And because it was criticized so many times, I ended up having to write a paper 23 pages long in a journal that generally likes papers that are less than 5 pages long. So anyway, and I love the fact now that I'm old and I'm retired, but I'm writing a book. I'm editing a book on complex behavior in the marine environment with papers on everything from limpet territoriality to tube-blenny all kinds of things. But anyway, that we have young people or middle-aged people like Yanis to carry the football over the line. So, it's interesting. Today, we had this World Cup soccer tournament, okay? And our president, Trump, got in the group when they were actually celebrating. And so someone was interviewing him. And she looked at him and she said, you need to have a decree that we no longer call it soccer, but we call it football. It is football. He knows it's football. He's a friend. Anyway, that was good. That has nothing to do with sharks.
Okay. Mary, you have some questions for Peter?
Yeah, I have a general question. It's kind of simple. It's what's the main reason hammerhead sharks swim in big groups? Like, is it more for safety, hunting, or something else?
So, well, I studied them at an underwater mountain, what we call a seamount, and they were in groups during the day. And I was always kind of, why do they form groups? Because they're big. Why they don't have to worry too much about predators. And and people always, when they look at a school, they think it's a phalanx of soldiers marching in line. A body length apart and in the same direction. And they're doing that to some part. But individuals leave that. Now these schools at the seamount, which I said were primarily made of females, and the females, it's kind of with sharks, when they give birth, it could be almost a third of their body mass, the female. So she puts a lot of energy into having babies, and they don't get reproductively mature until larger than the males. And so in the seamount, they move offshore earlier than the males. They form these schools, and they fight amongst each other. And these vixen females, the big ones, they can establish their position in the center, and then the males come darting in, and they rotate their clasper in a very provocative way, and pair it with the large one. So the schooling in part has to do at the seamount with mate selection. Um, Now, generally, when I've followed them away from the seamount, and I have many of them tagged at the seamount, and I can detect them with my receiver. I just detect one. So when they're going out and foraging, I think they're doing it by themselves. Um, but then they may move, as I said earlier, when we tagged them at Wolf Island. Uh, I think a dozen of them moved at the same time, uh, moved over to Wolf Island. And also, when I was at the Seamount, um, the sharks disappeared. And so, oh, what? Why they disappear? And they disappeared in groups. Uh, because I had a monitor there. I'm listening. We're detecting when they leave, and I assumed that if they left within 15 minutes or maybe together. But anyway, um, there was an upwelling event. That's cold water comes up, and they left at that time, and then they came back. Um, to my surprise. And so I said, well, how the hell did I do that? So this was way back when, because you don't have no fart. And it's just when they got satellites up. And so we're able to look at the temperature, the satellite temperatures, and show that there's an upwelling. So it's kind of like as scientists, we like to be creative, and we like to use different tools. Here we are on the ground putting these electronic tags on the sharks, and then we're finding out when they leave and when they come back, and then we're using a satellite all the way up there to detect the water mass movement. So that one was really kind of fun because we use these different techniques. So I hope I've given you the thing about it is the ocean. It's so easy to study animals on land. We can see so far. And so people have learned so much about birds in particular. Birds are very easy to study. But sharks, they're hard to study. I mean, as I said, and in terms of getting in the water and studying them, which I did, almost nobody ever studied. Even now, very few people actually have been able to spend day after day in that school looking at the sharks and seeing what they do. And that's what made it such a wonderful. When you study things, if you can find a system where you can actually see the sharks, see them, or your animal, like we did at the Seamount, and then, or white sharks off the Farallon Islands, seeing them feed. I mean, seeing predation is very rare. And so when I was a graduate student, I was starting out, I was working with a great scientist named Don Nelson, amazing guy, technically incredible. And Yanis knows him. Yeah, you may have been a student as a.
No, I never met him. I was Chris Lowe's student, so I
I know
came
you're
in.
a close student.
Yeah, I came in a few years after he died, unfortunately, but he was also a big influence on me.
Of course, because we're a family. There's Don, there's myself, then my students. So Don, uh, Chris Lowe, who's a terrific scientist, and his students. So I'm in the office with Don, and this was before people had ever many people had gotten in the water with sharks. Everybody thought they were all man eaters. Okay, this is back in the late '70s. Okay, that's how old I am. And he pulls out this scrap of paper, and on it is typed. And it's from this. He was a curator, Earl Held, of the San Francisco Aquarium. He died actually, but he had seen at this mountain this underwater mountain, Las Animas, in the middle of nowhere in the Gulf Coast, these schools of hammerhead sharks. And Dodd looked me in the eye and he said, "Now, if you really want to study sharks, you should get in the water and study these." And then he said, "But you know, hammerheads are the third most dangerous of all sharks." So I spent a whole year looking for them. One day, off Sarava, not far from La Paz, we jumped in the water. There they were. And so we went back to La Paz and we brought this sound system to attract them. And we lowered it down, the speaker down in the water to about 100 feet. And there I am with my scuba gear, waiting for the sharks to arrive as he's boom, 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 boom. We'd studied this, shark, these sounds attract silky sharks. None of them arrived. So I come to the surface and I'm sitting there with Don and we're saying, "Jesus, what's wrong?" And we had a fellow named Ted Rilsley. He was a volunteer, a wonderful swimmer, and he had to go to the bathroom. So he gets in the water and he's going to the bathroom. He says, "They're here." And we realized that at that moment that the scuba, because we'd studied sound, was making these sounds that frighten the sharks, the bubbles coming up to the surface. So we put on our snorkels, we swam out, and we could see these sharks vaguely underneath us in a school. And I took a big breath and I dove down, and suddenly the sharks are on either side of me. I could touch them, I go right through them. They're not eating me. But then I looked, they got small mouths. Why the hell are they going to eat me? I'm too big to beat for a bite. So I get underneath and I'm looking up, and it's beautiful when you see them and came to the surface. And then that led to studies of hammerhead sharks. That's how I got started on studying sharks, because I wanted to do it. I had read Dian Fossey, who everybody had studied gorillas from cages. And I don't want to do that. And Dian Fossey got outside a cage and got next to gorillas and studied them. And so I wanted to do what she had done, a woman. I wanted to imitate what she had done with sharks. So anyway.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Peter. Actually, when Peter talked about how hard it is to study sharks, it brings me memories because I started to love sharks since I was like 9, 10 years old. And I'm going to tell something. I love challenges. So when I can, if I can, obviously, I will want to swim with sharks because I only like did like two dives. One when when I was 15, and the other when I was like 15, almost 16. So I hope to see this beautiful species someday. not
So,
only,
so
not only
Gabriella,
visit. Huh?
are you Colombian or are you Colombian? Okay, so Malpelo Island is an incredible place to
Yes.
see sharks, and it is. And there's a woman who is uh, done many studies there. God, I was a senior moment. I'm not remembering her name, but you,
Sandra.
Sandra Basuto.
Sandra
Yeah.
Basuto,
Yeah.
she would take you out there. She once you get a little older, she's just you got to get in touch with her and say you love sharks, and she's now the director of MigraMar.
Yes.
By the way, I started that group with Alex Hearn 20, 30 years ago. It's giant now, and it's great, And I put in my trust. I've done very well. My wife and I are wealthy now because of the stock market. I'm going to give them $1 million when I pass away. So, uh, but it's going to be for research, and it's going to be for you guys, the young guys, girls and guys, to do research. So anyway, so Yanis, how are you doing these days?
I actually just got back from Malpelo with Sandra.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was there. So it was my first time out there. Beautiful, beautiful place.
Did you go to El Monstro,
Mhm.
the
We
sea
did,
mammal.
yeah. And I think
Yeah.
I'll add to your hammerhead stories in that one of the things I've been trying to do has been also to study these social groups of hammerheads with sort of our latest technology. And for example, where Peter was using free diving, I'm not a very good free diver. So now I use closed circuit rebreathers that have no bubbles. But for the same things Peter was talking about, they don't like bubbles. So I have a $10,000 piece of diving equipment on my back to go and sit down on the rocks. One of the other things we've been trying to do has been to put cameras onto hammerheads to study their behaviors within the school to get like a view of a
Yeah.
shark's view. But they've been very, very hard to do. And we've made very, very slow progress on this topic. So the progress you made, when was that study? Back in the 80s, I think you did a lot of that. We really haven't advanced too much since then. And mostly because it's a very challenging species to work with. You can find them in large numbers. Don was very right about that and about highlighting hammerheads, but working with them is very difficult. They're very hard to catch, much harder than other species. They just don't respond to attractants like other shark species do. So a lot of challenges, but I agree with Pete that they're probably one of the most fascinating questions in sort of animal behavior is the hammerhead schools, and probably one of them. I mean, it's hard to think of something more impressive than when you see a hammerhead school of hundreds to perhaps thousand animals.
And to add to Yanis, when we first were studying them, we dragged oh bait in the schools, and we never could get them to eat anything. They're thinking about sex,
They
not
don't. They're
food.
very hard to catch.
Yeah, and they're hard to catch because they leave the seamount and they go offshore to feed, and so to catch them, in a sense, you got to have your bait right when they leave or in the evening. So we've had a hard time, just as Yanis has, catching them and tagging them, and um, yeah, and they also, so one of the behaviors they do is what I call corkscrew swim. Do a full circle with a full twist, a full flip with a back flip with a twist, and then they will hit another terms. It's used to force subordinates to the end. But if you got a camera on one of these critters, that's going to be tough on that camera when they do that, you know. Uh, so, but it's so when I was working, I used the first underwater camera that was mobile, and what it was composed of was a big deck and a big camera and a camera on top of it. And Ellen Gates built a beautiful housing for it, but it weighed like maybe 50 pounds. So I go down with this huge thing and be at the edge of the school, and I get down 80 feet, maybe 90 feet, and I would be down there for a couple of minutes. I ended up being probably the best fit guy around after doing that all the time. But now they have GoPros, and they have very small cameras, and it's. I think what Yanis is doing, and I did it myself. Don Nelson was very inspiring with technologies. He really knew technologies well. You use these technologies, and you can answer new questions. And as well as um, analytical techniques. Some of the analytical techniques that Yanis has used, such as affinity indices, are very good. I didn't have that when I did studies of white sharks at a study at Año Nuevo Island. I did it in my own way, but I didn't have an index like that. So um, and I think uh, you can be really great. So I would say that I'm half biologist, half electronic engineer, and half geophysicist. I think when you combine, so when I was at Scripps, I used to go to a group called the Foundation for Ocean Research, and John Isaacs, he was the smartest guy at Scripps, but he didn't have a PhD. There were 2,000 PhDs there, the smartest guy, and uh, he had a group of engineers, and they would have to develop something and use it to get some information. It was very difficult because it's one thing to develop something, but another thing to actually implement it. And so I used to go to these meetings once a week, and the engineers, I loved them. They knew everything. They knew all the mathematics. They knew all the physics. They knew, but they weren't the scientists were more thinkers. We may not know. You know, I used trigonometry with white sharks, and I learned it because when I did it, I didn't do it in school, but these guys knew everything. So I learned so much from them, and Don Nelson's technician Jim McKibben, how to build things, you know, and use them. Now you don't have to build them. That's great. You can get them built for you, and you can concentrate on using them, and that's what people do now. Now, what I like about Yanis, let me just say, is he doesn't just tag animals. He also does experiments. He did a wonderful experiment showing that hammerhead sharks detect magnetic fields. He developed a pH sensor one time, many years, a master's degree, and he's used all these affinity indices. So you know, here's a guy like myself that is combines different fields, you know, and that's the way to move your field farther. Yeah, here I am, being very complimentary.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, we have a really good example of that, combining things. Well, I have a golden question for all these senior sharks. But first, I want to ask, have you seen the documentary Shark Whisperer?
I don't ever watch those things, but
I saw it yesterday.
Ah,
made a lot
perfect.
of them, but I don't watch them.
I haven't seen it, no.
Okay, I'm going to explain it a little bit. It's about Ocean Ramsey, that is a conservationist and marine biologist from Hawaii, and that she's always like proving the good image of sharks by being really near to them, taking photos and posting them on social media. The
So
thing
it's a
is,
funny thing. I started doing that right after Jaws, and I went. Don Nelson said to me, "How are you going to go here and talk about the behavior of white sharks and how they have complex behavior when everybody thinks they're a stupid, mindless feeding machine?"
Mhm,
And
yeah.
documentary after documentary, I did to try to dispel people of the fear of sharks. Um, but the problem, the white shark sometimes is a nasty character. Let me just say, I was on Bar Block's boat. You know, it was a white shark. It moved to the one side. It was a seal. So it came over. I said, "Get that seal." Seal gets to the other side of the boat. Gets to the other side of the boat. And Barb's, and we're putting a little bit of fish to get the shark. Yeah, feeding. And suddenly it goes, "Whoa!" on the transom of the boat, right out of Jaws, you know. And Taylor Chapel went up and patted him. You gotta watch out for these guys. The white shark is a scary, scary dude. I'll just tell you that. But others aren't. So, and the others, a lot of them, the ones that Yanis deals with, have a display, an agonistic display. They get frightened, and they bite because they're frightened. And if you know that, you can stay at a distance and be pretty safe. It's you know that some of the attacks are due to that. Another uh, is that when we kick, I'd be at the seamount, and these silky sharks would get behind me. And I thought, they're just sneaky bastards. You know, those guys, sneaky. And then I realized, having studied sound, that if I stopped kicking, they would go away, which they did. And so attacks, let's say in Florida, a lot of them have to do with biting their legs because people are creating uh, uh, particle displacements that the sharks think it's a prey dinner. So anyway,
Well, actually, Ocean Ramsey swam with white sharks. Actually, one of them is the blue, that is the biggest white shark ever. And I want to talk about that. What do you think that sometimes these kind of things sends the wrong message about safety and behavior, or what do you think of this kind of contact-based advocacy about shark conservation?
Well, you know,
Well,
so I was in a department um, it was called Fisheries, and Conservation. And I've always thought myself as really a non-conservation to some extent because I think the whole field of conservation is a little naive because things come and go. They always have. Some become extinct. Some radiate. In fact, writing a book on sharks, I wrote a whole chapter on their their evolutionary history. And there were periods when we were struck by a meteor, and almost all of them died out except for one species, and it radiated. Yeah, so and then they think they don't want the Earth to warm, and they don't want the climate to change. It's always changed, and so and the fact that they kind of think they're going to stop it changing. I mean, this whole thing against cars turns out that temperatures on the Earth increased uh, after carbon dioxide, before carbon dioxide concentration, more recent studies. So, but then again, the challenge, and Yanis can talk more about it, is managing populations. It's don't wipe them out. And management's pretty good on the east coast of America right now. They have to do every year a population assessment based on what's caught, and if and so and I don't know, like Hawaii. I Yanis, are your populations stable, or are they decreasing, or what says you?
I'm not sure about Hawaii. I'll let Mariana answer. I think she was about to say something, and I'll go afterwards.
when I saw this documentary, and what I think it's that, and about this, what I say, like what Ocean Ramsey is doing, um, it changed the perception of sharks. That's a good point. Yeah, like, because yeah, sometimes it was like man eaters, everyone like, let's kill sharks because they are going to kill us and things like that. So it changed that, and I think that's good. But what I don't think it's good, or what I don't like about her practices, it's like touching sharks all the time, like petting and things like that. And I think that's really, really dangerous because a lot of people, and I have met random people traveling or where I live, and they ask me like, "Oh yeah, but if I encounter shark, I only do like this, no? Like this girl that is in Instagram." And I was like, "No, like you need to know, like." She's like telling the world that it's so easy that you can just jump with a white shark and just do like this. And I think it's dangerous to say that to the world. Let's not talk about touching sharks and maybe like diseases, things like that. I'm not a fan about touching wild animals. That's another point, but I think it's dangerous, the message that she's also sending to the world.
So,
I think it is a double-edged sword because it does for sure. Seeing people swimming with sharks, big sharks, does help get rid of the myth of them being monsters, and we're seeing that. But we're also starting to see the sort of balance swing the other way, and in terms of people getting this impression that these animals are harmless, and they're not. They're predators. The chance of them hurting a human is very low, but it's not zero. And again, it's a predator. It doesn't care about your feelings. And they do and sometimes will bite humans. And I think we're again seeing examples of that in some places, unfortunately, where humans are becoming too compliant around these animals. Again, acting like there's no threat at all. And I think we've seen some recent examples of where that has gone catastrophically wrong. So at the end of the day,
Dennis, you would be talking about tiger sharks.
no, I was thinking was there's a few different species that, I mean, I think that we're seeing this approach with you can see it in a lot of beachgoers, for example, when there's sharks in the water. There's very little response to these animals, and it's good that we've gone to this stage where you don't need to panic because there's a shark in the water. But we're seeing other locations where I think the compliance and the comfort around the animals is getting too much. So in Israel, for example, where they had this large aggregation of dusky sharks, and you were having people hand feeding sharks, and it's just bathing in the water, hand
That's
feeding the
dangerous.
sharks, and that had been going on for a few years, and they recently just had unfortunately a fatal attack. So it just goes to show you you've got to treat these animals for what they are and respect them for what they are, which is predators. Again, they are, if you compare them to terrestrial predators, it's a very different situation. They're much less, I think, much less dangerous than terrestrial predators. You would never go and hang around with bears or lions, and you just wouldn't do that. Whereas you can do that with a shark and probably get away with it. But it doesn't necessarily mean you always should, because again, it doesn't mean you always will get away with it, and we have to keep that in mind.
So when I was at Miami, um, I was told we'd get up in a helicopter and they would go along the beach there. There were sharks everywhere where the people were. I mean, they're swimming among them. Now they're nurse sharks. A lot of them are not going to be a danger. Um, but a lot of the attacks occur when somebody gets too close to a shark. The shark's doing this agonistic display, and they get bitten. In fact, many years ago, the whole idea that they had an agonistic display was a surgeon had noted that a child had 130 or 140 stitches and no flesh removed. So that type of agonistic attack, and that's particularly where Yanis is a gray reef shark that will show that if you get closer. And lemon shark, I've noticed lemon sharks doing it. And then, of course, you're kicking with your net attracts the sharks. And so, but when you start feeding them, then now that's a different thing. That can, they can bite you because they're hunger motivated. No, Yanis, you're right. It's a double-edged sword.
Double edge. Well, this is the end, sadly. But thank you for, like I said, to our gods of the ocean, to our ocean advocates from Morocco, Mary. Thank you to
Thank
you,
you.
to
For
also.
me, it's been a delight to see Yanis. It's really, last time I saw him was at a scientific meeting.
Good to
And
see you too, Pete.
yeah, and he looks like he's conquering the world for us.
Conquering the world for us. And I
Okay,
saw you as a shark champion on Instagram, actually.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that was for SharkCon. I did get an award, a
you
belt
did. That's
actually.
great. Great.
Congrats.
Thank you,
Congratulations.
Yeah.
thank you.
And well, this is the first English session because I want to keep this English session of Shark Convention. And it's like a dream come true because, as you saw today, this is science not just about facts, but about purpose. So,
Gabriela, where did you learn how to speak English? You speak it beautifully.
oh, thank you. Actually, that's a funny story because I learned English first with movies and with songs, and then I started like professionally with what is the name in English? With an alliance here in Barranquilla called the Cultural Center Colombo Americano.
Huh.
So I started when I was like 8, 9 years old, and
boy.
I like literally finished my English class like the last month. So,
So Yanis and I know a scientist. His name is Mauricio Hoyos,
oh,
and
I know him.
he speaks English beautifully. He also learned it by looking at movies. He loves to look at movies, English movies. So that's a good way to learn the language.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to talk with you. I'm going to have to head out, and and I'm glad I was finally able because I couldn't get into your Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Okay. Bye bye.
And well, bye. And for those who are here, the followers, this version of Shark Convention is in collab with the Mexican organizations Saving Our Sharks and Desmitificando Tiburones, and also in the agenda of the Sharks National Month. That it's a way that both organizations raise awareness between local people, and right now in an international way, about the good image of sharks. So thank you very much, and remember our
I
superpower.
said about Yanis that he's going to conquer the world. You're
He
going to
will
conquer
conquer
the
the world.
world. Good to talk with you.
Remember our superpower, information and technology. Thank you, our senior sharks. Thank you, our junior shark. And
Thank
see
you.
you next time.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Okay.